Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rapping with the Rep. I'm State Representative Ken Gordon, and here on our show we're welcoming Rick Parker, who is the new president of the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ken.
I'm really excited. Rick has been a lifelong resident of Burlington and is taking over as president of the chamber, and so really brings two perspectives to his role as the new president, being that you are a resident and also you have been a small business owner here in Burlington. Can you talk to us, tell us about how this unique perspective that you bring will help you in working in your role as the new president of the chamber?
Well, as you said, Ken, I am a lifelong resident. I spent 30 years in the private sector, and during that time, I had a connection to the town through youth sports and coaching. Really enjoyed my time in coaching both baseball and basketball in the town. And as my kids aged out, it coincided with me finishing up that career, and I decided to bring an embroidery franchise here to town. So I needed to try to get that connection back, and as I did so, I saw the challenges that small businesses have in getting started and in dealing with a lot of issues. So I started getting more involved with the chamber and trying to tap into that knowledge base that other businesses had, and slowly but surely worked my way into the position where I'm the president of the chamber right now.
What I've been impressed with in getting to know the chamber, the members of the chamber, and how it works is that it's so much more than a networking activity for members of the chamber. It's truly involved with the community and has programs so that when the community has certain needs and it has the opportunity to help, it jumps right in and shows its involvement.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing from the businesses that are here in town, and a lot of this falls on my predecessor, Jim Murphy, which I've said before, he was kind of a one-arm paper hanger. He is now president of the Charitable Foundation. We have a lot of very good citizens here in town that are business owners, and a lot of good businesses here that want to get that connection to the community. And the chamber, we kind of hold people a little to a higher standard to have them reach out and get connected to the community. And Jim has done a good job of finding those organizations that need help and lending that business perspective to it that helps organize and execute their mission, because there are some great organizations that, while they may be very good at reaching out and helping people, aren't necessarily the people that can connect to the business. And that's really what the chamber, one of the chamber's missions is.
Yeah, it's a great networking opportunity in that way. And I just had a conversation with Jim Murphy, and we were talking about the community garden. That's one of the activities that the chamber is involved with Jim, with Brent, with Brendan Stapleton, and others, in which they're operating a garden here in town. The garden produces produce, and when the produce is grown, a part of it goes to help people in need right here in this community. So it's a great cycle and an opportunity to help.
Yeah, again, it connects the business to the town, to the residents. As a Burlington resident, I've seen the town grow over the years, and some people look at that as it's not my little town anymore. Well, we're very fortunate that businesses pay about 2/3 of the tax base, but they're also held to that standard. They're not just going to come here and set up business and think about profits, and these companies aren't like that. They want to get involved. So the Charitable Foundation helps to connect those businesses and provide, whether it be sweat equity or money, to support the organizations that are really making a difference here in Burlington.
You know, it's a great opportunity now. The two of us are here together. You're the new president of the chamber, and I was just reelected to another term as state representative. Thank you to the folks in Burlington who supported me, and I appreciate that. And I'm here and available and accessible to you, so please contact me as there are things that we can do together. In this role, I think there are plenty of things that we can do together through the business community and government to work to solve our problems. One of the things that we talk about quite a bit is our traffic and transportation needs. This affects businesses because they're trying to get employees into work in Burlington, and it affects our residents because they're trying to get around town and into town and out of town without being stuck in traffic all the time.
Yeah, we now call it the T word, whether it's business or as a local resident. We think of it as a very negative word, but I also meet with many of the Massachusetts chamber directors. They have a T word, it's called tumbleweeds. They would much rather have a traffic problem. That being said, we don't want to totally dismiss it either, as it is the number one challenge that we deal with, whether it be from a business perspective or from a resident. You and I both know that we're working on several areas to mitigate those, because we can't just talk about the traffic. We really need to be doing something. And if people sometimes get that perception there's still traffic out there, so nobody's doing anything about it, I know that we're partnering with Middlesex 3 to help mitigate those, but you and I have spoken about some of the challenges that, like, the restaurant group is having in getting people here. I don't want to turn this back on you for a moment, but I'm going to. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you're working on that are helping both the short-term and long-term perspectives from traffic?
Right, absolutely. And first of all, you mentioned a good point, which is that the absence of traffic will result in an empty town. So we need to have our business activity and our real estate market remaining vibrant. That's going to bring some level of traffic here, which we need. The issue is the balance. And in government, the issue always is looking at perspectives from both sides and reaching that balance where everyone gets what they need out of a situation, and we realize that there are two sides to a story. With respect to the traffic and the transportation, as you know, what we're working on from a long-range perspective is trying to straighten out the intersection of 3 and 128, because that really does frustrate us in any number of ways. When that traffic builds up, people come off the highway, they use our town streets, that clogs our town streets. So there's a domino effect to that. However, we know that with tightening budgets and not being able to really rely on the millions of dollars that it's going to take to fix that problem overnight, we've got to do something in the short run so that we can address these problems. And as you know, through Middlesex 3, we've started with a transportation management association that's helping business to find alternative methods of transportation to get their employees into work. Because our biggest traffic challenge comes in rush hour. And that's when employees are generally coming in and leaving. It's not as much of a problem on the weekend, although we have areas of town that are challenged there as well. And so what we're looking at are various ways, be they ride shares, be they shuttles, or other ways of even bicycle lanes and paths to get people into their jobs. Now, with that comes the opportunity to expand out once we begin that process, which is to say the restaurants have a very unique challenge. So as you know, they're opening usually at a later time, sometimes an earlier time depending on the restaurant, but at a different time than some of these more traditional business, the high-tech businesses that we have that are a driving force, an engine here in Burlington. So the restaurants have a different schedule, and they need help on the weekend.
I think one of the things that I have seen that's very positive through Middlesex 3, they've brought partners to the table that already have successful stories about how they're handling their employee privatized shuttles. So constantly you see when there's a problem like this, people take off in different directions and don't share the information. I think that's one of the greatest things that I've seen from the Middlesex 3 Coalition, that they have companies that have already done this, and they've brought partners together that can make a difference. From the resident side, I've taken off the chamber hat for a minute, we also have to keep in mind, how is this going to benefit the residents in Burlington in the long run? Because while we can take some of the cars off the road, bringing people here, and that's our job as the chamber and working with you to help us get the employees here. That's great for the businesses. How do you see this potentially down the road helping out the residents as well?
That's a great question, and it's a good challenge that we have in front of us, because there are residents here in Burlington that are telling me, well, if the plan is to bring employees out of Somerville, Cambridge, and Boston through Alewife, through a shuttle, through essentially a bus with Wi-Fi, if that's our goal, well, I want to get on that bus going back in, because I'm in a direct commute situation, not that reverse commute. Why would we send a shuttle back empty if the businesses are funding, essentially what would happen is the businesses would buy the rides on the shuttle to get people out here, so the businesses would be funding that expense. Well, it makes no sense to bring the buses back empty and take the gas it takes to do that to get their next load of people to come back out here. So to address that, what we've got to have is a place to pick up residents to do that. And what I'm really curious to know is how many of our residents, how many Burlington residents would use the transportation to get back into Alewife or other places, but let's start with Alewife. And so what I'd like to know from you folks watching today is how many would take advantage of the opportunity to have a direct shuttle or other form of transportation to get to Alewife? Are you working in Boston? Are you commuting in there during the Monday to Friday during the business day? And would the opportunity to get a shuttle with Wi-Fi, would that be attractive to you? So there's an email that's been flashing, I think, on the bottom of the screen. If you could email me and let me know your thoughts, because we've got to determine the capacity. Is there, how much of a need is there? Because I hear about it, I want to know what that need is. And when we have that need, then we've got to look at, okay, we've got to have a place for residents to congregate, to get this shuttle out, because it makes no sense for the shuttle to go all around town and come back in, because then it's competing with the MBTA. We already have a bus that goes in. Residents can already do that, although I'm not sure whether they would put their car, if they're driving, to a stop, unless it's within walking distance of where they live, to do that. So we're going to have to find a place for people to leave their cars that is attractive to the Burlington resident and the area resident, Burlington or Bedford, for example, my district, but not become a magnet for people from other areas to bring their cars in here. That doesn't solve our problem at all.
Well, I think, as you mentioned that, my first thought is that other people would come here, but Woburn already has their setup with Anderson and Wilmington, and everyone, they're on the trains there. So it's really from Burlington up the Route 3 corridor that we're talking about. So I don't think that there'd be a great influx of cars coming down 128 if it
Right.
in fact was one of the solutions. That's a great thing to think about. I think the people hopefully there will be people that will be filling out the information and getting it to you, if they could add what they're paying for parking, because it always becomes a financial issue. What are the savings going to be? What are the time constraints? And the biggest thing is, how can we get some of those cars off the road? And it's up to all of us to contribute to it. I think the businesses are looking for ways to get the employees here quicker with less traffic, and the residents are looking to mitigate some of the traffic. It's that partnership, and that's what I'm really excited about. Because I am a resident, I have a vested interest in both ways. I want to see it work for the town, I want to see it work for the residents, I want to see it work for the businesses. We're in a good position right now. Burlington is a destination. People want to be here, they want to work here, they want to live here. We want to make sure that we keep it that way.
Yeah, when we're talking about traffic coming down from Route 3, we know that there's a jam at the end of Route 3 most days, because that's where Route 3 ends, at the intersection of 128. So those cars are stuck there. I'm not sure that if we put the opportunity to have a sort of a hub of transportation here in Burlington, I don't think it would be that attractive to people coming from far to the north in Route 3, because then they've already gone through traffic.
I think you're right.
So what we've got to look at is an opportunity for people coming from that area of the north to put their cars, to pull over, have their cars pull over, and have an opportunity for transportation from them. And as a state representative, I'm in a position, and I enjoy being in a position, where I can work cooperatively with another area of the state to say, the best way to address this for Burlington is to bring in another area and address it globally, address it with you as well, to keep cars, give them the opportunity to come out of those areas and not have sort of an intermediate station. They'll do that less.
Well, the Chamber and its members certainly look forward to continuing the conversation on traffic, and I think we could talk for hours on traffic. One of the things that I found really interesting, before I was involved with the Chamber, I met you at an event over at Health Edge, and you pulled me aside, and it was the minimum wage question came and you pulled me aside and you said, hey, as a small business owner in town, how is this going to affect you? What I've taken that and tried to filter that down now to chamber members. I want to be the voice, I want the chamber to be the voice for the smaller businesses here in town. It is very difficult in today's climate to run a small business. I see it day after day, business owners that are working on that hamster wheel inside their business. They're certainly hearing via email, via news, via every media outlet that there's changes that are going to impact small business, but they're so busy in their business and they don't feel like they have an advocate. I know that you, as an advocate for small business and people in your district, have reached out to people like me. I take that as my challenge, is to further that by reaching out to all of our members and soliciting their input and filtering that back up to you. I certainly won't have all the answers, but I'll certainly have some questions that I can be their voice.
And that's very important for me, because with every issue there is that balance. There are two sides to many issues, and it's my job to consider all the sides of an issue and learn all the sides of an issue, because if I come in predisposed to deciding one thing or the other before I hear everything, before I hear the concerns of businesses, of residents, of this district, and also putting it into context of the challenges that the state is facing, because many times challenges that are faced outside of our district come into this district and affect us. And so I can't ignore that as well. And eventually I've got to make a decision. But in gathering the information for that decision, the chamber has been very valuable, and other community groups have been very valuable too, because everyone brings something to the table. And just as we're talking about sort of the issue of traffic versus the lack of traffic versus having businesses leave and the residents have to pay a greater percentage of the cost to run the town, in that same way, things like the minimum wage come in the middle. We've got to, can we, and I think that, what we did was we raised the minimum wage because we heard from residents here and throughout the Commonwealth who said we can't earn less than the average rent in the greater Boston area and survive. But the way I looked at it was, okay, how can I help small business to be able to pay the increased labor costs if they're right now paying minimum wage? How can we help them to pay that increased labor cost? And we were able to address that by reforming the unemployment insurance premium table to give them a little break that way, so that everyone can get a little something. I think that's the way that we solve our problems, rather than what we see sometimes, what we read about in Washington, which is just intransigence.
Yeah, I think one of the key points is it's always communication. And I think the larger companies have people that they have appointed to be their representative. And again, my passion falls for the small business because I've been there and I know what it's like to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning worrying about, where is the next payroll coming from. But I know that I will be their voice and will filter it up to you, and we count on you to continue to do the things that you're doing at the State House that are going to be both advantageous for business and the residents of Burlington.
Looking into these next 2 years, what are some of the issues that you think that small businesses will face, some of their challenges that we can address together?
Well, I certainly think that a lot of the competition that we see today comes from the internet. I know that we all look at, and this is really not a challenge for you, it's maybe a challenge to the audience, to think about, that $5 that you may save. You're going to have a truck transport it. There's a carbon footprint issue. But even more to the point, look at your neighbors. Look at these local businesses. These businesses need your support. They've chosen Burlington to be their home, and in many cases, they're also residents of Burlington. So they're paying their taxes on their business, they're paying their taxes as a resident, they're actively involved in the community. I'm just asking that people look to small business here in town as one of their first solutions. Buy locally, buy chamber, that's going to be one of our big pushes going forward. Small business, we always hear about, it's the backbone of America. The internet, while it has its great advantages, I mean, we're all using it as a tool. I just ask that people look beyond saving a couple of dollars and really try to think about your neighbors, think about your local community. This is a way that everybody can help not only the Burlington business community, but Burlington residents as well.
You know what government can do sometimes is find ways to level the playing field. And I'm interested in exploring some of those ways. You know, it used to be that we would go to our local drugstore when we needed a prescription filled. Now, I don't know that many of them still exist at all. Other small businesses that used to dot our landscape, you know, have been taken over by franchises or chains. There are some hardware stores that are left, but you know, it seems that they're disappearing, and they need to be supported so that they can compete with the large box stores. And I'd like to find ways to support those businesses to keep them vibrant.
Well, that would be great if we could level the playing field. But I look at small businesses as a group. I want them to know that the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce is about all businesses, and I will hold them to being good citizens as well, because I live here. I love this town. I love the way it's evolved, and there's a good partnership between the businesses and the town. The planners have done a great job at keeping primarily the businesses in one section of town and residents in another. But again, it's a team, it's a partnership, and while I tend to be on a little bit of each one of these teams, I'm very happy that people don't just talk, they back it up and get involved and help make the community a better place.
Right. One of the small businesses that we do have here in Burlington are the high-tech small business, at least small business from the point of view of how many people are working there. And one of the challenges I know that we're going to be facing in this term, one of the issues we're going to face on this term is going to be covenants not to compete, employment restrictions. And I've been involved with that my whole career as an employment lawyer, as well as now as a legislator. What are the issues that you're hearing? Because that's an issue that has two sides to it. There are employers, some that tell me, hey, look, I want to have access to the labor market. And I come to Burlington, I come to Massachusetts, and the labor market is tied up in these employment restrictions. And then there are employers, others who say, I've got to protect my my product.
This would be a great segue for me to ask you a question, because I do hear a lot on this topic. I've heard the number $80,000 from one company is what it takes them to recruit the top talent, you know, coming out of MIT or coming out of Harvard that are the leading programmers. And they want a method to protect that talent. You know, they see that they have some proprietary software or something, and they don't want employees to just take that. You know, they've invested in this employee, they've invested in this technology, they've got a product, they don't want it to walk out the door. On the other hand, I see some companies that, for whatever reason, had a great product, have great people, and maybe through financial constraints or it didn't move along, the company didn't move along quick enough, and they're forced to lay some of these people off. Now these people, because of the covenants they've signed, become unemployable. I see both sides of it. Certainly, I don't have the experience in this area. As an employment attorney, I'm sure that you have much more knowledge about it. I mean, how do you see solving that problem? Because it definitely is a problem right here in Burlington.
Right, and you've gone in, Rick, to that balance issue, which is that sometimes there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to every problem, but we know that different states have handled this in different ways, and we can see the results of that. So first of all, we have in Massachusetts, and would strengthen, if we were to move forward, would strengthen the Trade Secrets Act, Uniform Trade Secrets Act. So there would be restrictions from any disclosure of any proprietary information from one employee if they were to go from one job to another. And you mentioned the costs of obtaining and training a worker in the high-tech industry, but I think that cost might go down if the labor market was somewhat freed up, because the reason that companies have to spend so much money to find employees is because there's a restricted pool of them because of all of these employment restrictions. So one issue would be to make sure we're protecting what really needs to be protected, which is the proprietary information that companies are afraid to lose, and with good reason. While at the same time looking at that issue of, well, if someone has been laid off, should they be prevented from continuing the career that they've been trained to enter? Should a software engineer have to leave that profession through no fault of their own? So from their point of view, I think most people would say, no, what did they do wrong? From the point of view of the employer, losing the employee, well, there are protections in place to protect any trade secret that they can demonstrate that they have. And then from the point of view of the employer at that time that's looking to acquire someone, well, they can do that without that heavy investment if they know there's someone right next to them who comes to apply for a job, who's got the training and experience they're looking for, but is limited to a restriction. And
with all due respect to the legal profession, I think the last thing that businesses and employees want to get involved in is a legal battle.
Right.
Every time that there's an issue. How do you foresee us getting past that? Because the last thing we want to do is add more cost to the structure.
Right, and experienced lawyers, experienced employment lawyers, we've handled this many, many times, and 90% of the time, what will happen is the two businesses will get together and say, we've got a problem. We've got an employee who really wants to work for employer number 2, and they want to hire this person. And the relationship, for one reason or other, has broken down between the previous employer and that employee. Most of the time, and again, 9 out of 10 times, the two employers can get together and reach a deal that satisfies them before there's a tremendous investment in the litigation costs of actually getting before a judge. It's difficult, especially in Massachusetts, because it's unreliable. We don't really know what a judge is going to decide one way or the other. So businesses, small businesses and large, would rather control the outcome of a dispute by reaching a compromise. And that largely happens.
I think one of the great things about being involved with the Chamber is I get to see these companies here in town. As a resident, I drove by them all my life, had no idea what's going on. I mean, certainly you see some of the larger companies, Leahy and Oracle, and you have an idea what's going on. But some of the smaller companies end up coming out of Cambridge, because by and large, the city's now, the new development is all residential, and the businesses are moving out this way. The challenges in recruiting these employees are to build the infrastructure, and you're seeing it happening here in Burlington right now with the restaurants all coming in and giving these the top talent in the area somewhat of an urban option. These kids come out of school and they're used to being able to walk everywhere. They don't have vehicles and thus the transportation issue. But we've built up the area to support these businesses that a lot of people really don't know what's going on. And when we talk about the covenant agreements here, these are the challenges that those businesses have, and those businesses are the ones that are supporting a lot of the other businesses here in town. So it really all plays together. It's a web of issues that could potentially come up, but I think we've done a pretty good job by and large in keeping it moving in the right direction.
You're right. These are all those interrelationships. And what happens, the challenge that we have is that Burlington is an attractive place for businesses to land. It's the rents certainly provide a savings over Cambridge and Somerville at this point. But what we've got to do is make sure that the labor costs for these businesses, these high-tech businesses, don't consume the savings, which is to say that we've got to provide an opportunity to get the high-tech worker out to Burlington in a way that's affordable to that worker and affordable for the business to get them here. And these are challenges I think we can meet, and I'm looking forward to working together with the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce and you, Rick Parker, as we work for the next into the future for the next few years together.
I as well, Ken. I think one of the other issues, we have a government affairs committee here in town. The Chamber is actively working on making sure that committee represents and is an accurate representation of our membership. As I said earlier, getting the small businesses more involved, letting them know that they have a voice at the table. I mean, you were certainly receptive to me when I was a small business owner, and I want to pay that forward by letting small businesses know we have good representation for some of the larger companies. We need to know what the challenges are of the small business, and that's part of my job. I go and I speak to business owners, and we get quickly beyond the niceties of hello. I want to find out what their challenges are so that we can actually bring those to the table and present the challenges that they're seeing to you for just to inform you what they need help with.
Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation, and the time certainly flies when we get together and talk about these issues that affect our business community and our residents. Folks, thank you for tuning in. I'm State Representative Ken Gordon. This has been Rapping with the Rep. Thank you.
Did it go over?